Welcome to the Cap Planner podcast, where we dive into the dynamic world of private capital markets. Whether you're new to private market investing or a seasoned professional, this podcast unpacks the latest trends, insights, and opportunities shaping the industry. Featuring expert guests and deep discussions, Cap Planner is your go-to resource for staying informed and inspired. Hi, Jody. Happy Monday.
I know, right? And actually, it's Monday, President's Day. So, is that one of these? It's not one of the holidays that's been canceled or renamed yet.
Well, that's a good way to start. No, I
It's
don't think
still,
it has. We're
it's
starting
still called
strong.
President.
For those of you who do not know, Jody has had a really fun weekend of dealing with all sorts of different types of people because, well, actually, Jody's kind of, I think, like outside areas is that parking has always been a little bit of a conflict. And in the childhood
Every
house,
place. In Mill
every
Valley,
place.
we had a neighbor who we had a whole street in Mill Valley, and this neighbor, for whatever reason, always parked his car behind my carport. So when we would back out, we would get so close to hitting the car and we asked him, "Would you mind moving the car?" And he, instead of being like, "No problem," he purposely parked his car there. So then we got into sort of we purposely would tap our car against his car, and it became an ongoing,
No, no, no.
there
This is not a we.
me.
This is not a we
Fine.
situation. This is a Jody situation.
Yes, and then
And
in San
then
Francisco, yeah,
oh,
and
this
then
is
in San
then we progressed. Then Jody
Right.
moved from Mill Valley to San Francisco, and she had an apartment and with a designated parking spot, and obviously, like, the garage doors open and close, and the building had 2 different sets of garage doors, and then there was one, like, tiny spot in between both, which could
Tiny
fit
spot, is the
like a
thing.
smart car or like a motorcycle type of
Yeah, not an
vehicle.
SUV or a pickup truck or anything else, which for some reason, they always felt like, "Oh, it won't be noticeable that the entire rear end of the car would be in my, parking spot." So, I took it upon myself to help out the city of San Francisco make money because not only would I have the car ticketed, but I would have the car towed, ticketed and towed, and that's like a $500 ticket.
Jody would sit when we both lived in San Francisco, we would have dinner a lot, like, at Jody's apartment, and we'd get food or whatever else it was, and we would come up the street from, like, a workout class or Equinox
There
or
was a car
something,
there. It was like
and we'd
playing
see it, and
whack-a-mole.
she had the number on speed dial, and also, now that you don't live in this apartment, we can say this, but when Jody moved into the apartment, like, the red on the edges of the sidewalk were very,
Oh,
um,
right. Didn't I
it
paint those myself?
no, you and Blake did it, where they got spray bottles and
I
they
remember this. Oh,
sprayed the
yes,
edge
I'm
of it.
creative. I have been an entrepreneur the whole time. So fast forward to now we are in Miami and at my apartment here in Coconut Grove. I have 2 spots as a matter of fact, but that's the good news. The bad news is I'm not home a lot during the day and neither is my boyfriend. So people feel like that's, free bait.
Fair
So
game.
I right.
Right.
It's right. It looks so enticing because these spots are up front. So anyways, just today in the mail I got from Amazon like 4 of those little red things that says in English and in Spanish, because 'cause I'm catering to my community here, that you could no parking. And then I have signs for the wall, which actually brings me to a recent article that I read today in the Wall Street Journal. I don't know if it's today's paper exactly, but it's talking about the jobs report, right? And it says that while, there are people who are negative on what's going on in terms of like, not being able to find a job or that housing is expensive, but then there is a whole group of people who are actually very positive, who look at this and say that they believe in personal agency and personal responsibility in choosing a path that will bring them to success. That is a quote from the article. And I think it all ties together nicely because that is my approach. Like, I can't rely on other people to get things done. I can't rely on other people to help me afford my apartment and keep the business going. And it is our job to have our own agency and to have our own personal responsibility in being entrepreneurs and being innovative. That is how all of this ties together.
I mean, I think this even goes back to when we had Coach Karen on, right? However many months ago, and really talking about when you change your mindset to think that things are happening for you, even if it's negative or even if something's challenging, that it's happening for you for a reason versus being, oh, poor me, that it's much more empowering to think, okay, I can rise to the occasion and I can figure out a solution to go forward, or I can let this completely take me over like a tidal wave and I can just be struggling to get to the surface.
You look at it as an opportunity. And I think, I mean, listen, one thing I'm aware of, I had this on a call once with one of the law firms, and we got on to do a prep for a webinar, and it was supposed to just be myself and one other lawyer, and it ended up being myself and three other lawyers. So I said, like, I feel like it's a little bit imbalanced here. And of course, me, I just said it like straight out. And the lawyer who is our friend and colleague, I think didn't think my tone and my delivery was so great. And she's right, and I said to her something about the fact, like, I know my tone can be very abrasive and can be very direct, which not everybody is comfortable with. And she said, well, no one can accuse you of not having self awareness. So, I mean, there is that, right? But
Good.
it's
Yeah.
hard when you see things so clearly and you appreciate that maybe other people don't. But at a certain point, the goodwill goes because we really just want to get things done. We want to move that ball down the field. And actually, we want to play to win, we want to score.
I think it's like big or small, right? On Valentine's Day was over the weekend on Saturday, and as a very good pregnant person, I am on a big buttermilk pancake train, and then also on a chocolate sprinkle donut train. So we went to a place down the street from where we live, and this is a place that we frequent a lot. And we get one pancake, and then we each get our own thing. We share the
When
pancake, and
you
this
get one pancake, but the pancake's like the size of your head.
yeah, it's a massive pancake, and this pancake came out, and it was like a quarter of the size, and, like, the place was busy, but I was, like, looking at this pancake, and I was like, "Does this look small?" And Ryan looks and he's like, "Yeah, like, it does look small," and the manager had come over and brought the food, and they brought the other stuff, and I was like, we're here enough that I know this is noticeably smaller. Can we what do you think? And she looks at it and she goes, that is definitely small. So she brings a whole other like bigger plate out with another pancake. And I was like, now we're talking. And
Yeah,
it's
who's
exactly
winning
what
now?
you're saying. Right. It's exactly like you can either like my great grandmother, Jody's grandmother used to say this, if you're gonna take shit, you gotta open your mouth. And you can pick which one you're gonna do. If you're gonna eat it,
Gotta take
mouth
shit
wide
family.
open. Right. So
All right, let's talk about our guest today.
yeah. So Paul Press, speaking of innovation and entrepreneurship, is a trusted search partner for private equity firms building portfolio operations and value creation teams. He's the founder of Press and Associates. He is a top voice and a leadership voice in the whole arena of private capital markets and how these firms are looking to grow and expand their teams and make sure that they're finding the right people for the roles they're looking to fill. Hi, Paul.
Hey Morgan. Hey Jody. How you guys doing?
So good. So I would love to know, and Morgan and I talked about this about a half an hour ago. What is happening in PE today? Like we know that deals have been a little interesting, but we would love to hear from you. Maybe you could fill us in on exactly what you do and what you're seeing today in the markets.
Definitely, definitely. I spend most of my time in the private equity ecosystem in one of two areas, either within the value creation team, so at the GP level, building out value creation teams. They're sometimes called portfolio ops teams, but these are the teams that sit between the deals and investment team and the portfolio company leadership team, C-suite, and board members, and really help those portfolio companies to deliver on their value creation plan and to make sure that the whole period is a successful one where they get to from A to B as quickly and as successfully as possible. So that's where I spend most of my time hiring heads of portfolio ops, operating partners, functional heads, sometimes operations, generalist type of professionals. And then I also do a bit of work in the portfolio companies as well. Sometimes they embed that talent into the portfolio companies through chief transformation officers, kind of VPs of transformation. So do a lot of work in that space as well as the technology function.
When you say value creation, because our listeners really span the gamut of people who are really experienced with private capital markets and then somebody who is in the shallow end of the pool. When you say value creation and private equity firm, can you give what that means to somebody who might not be as familiar?
Mhm. Private equity, traditionally over the last 20, 30 years or so, has been very focused on the deal side of private equity. So all things financial engineering. You see a lot of acquisitions and roll-up plays and that side of private equity. But over the last, I'd say, 10-ish years or so, there's been more of a focus on value creation. And essentially, private equity firms have started to build out an in-house team of consultants slash operator type of professionals who essentially partner with the deals team, understand what the investment thesis is, what types of companies they're buying and selling. They get involved sometimes with the due diligence piece. And then once the company's been bought, it's not, okay, portfolio company C-suite, off you go, make us some money and we'll see you in 3 years, 5 years.
Right. If it
This
were if it
team,
were only that easy, right? I think
yeah,
they
if it was really
probably
that
would
easy, yeah,
if that was
yeah.
possible, but I don't think in today's world that is that type of value creation is not so quick to come, and it does take I think what I hear you're saying is that it takes a little more effort and that the private equity firms actually have a team that is dedicated once the deal is done to stay with the portfolio company and help contribute in an operational standpoint for value creation.
Yeah, 100%. And each private equity firm sets it up differently to one another, depending on their investment thesis, but also their partnership with the portfolio companies. Some like to be really hands off and just have these operating partners jump in quarterly for board meetings. Others, like Vista, for example, have a set playbook where we do it this way. This is a proven playbook that we implement to create value. So it does vary from firm to firm as to how hands-on they are, and that's reflected in the types of profiles that operate within the value creation team.
My question is, what's your take on it? I mean, you obviously see the teams who are investing and having these portfolio creation roles, right? I mean, because if you're doing the recruiting for it, that works well in your favor. But from your opinion of what you've seen, obviously, as somebody who's been in the private equity world for a long time, is this something that you see as a positive change, that it's really making an impact for the success of the deals? Or do you think it's something where there's still room to be improved upon? Or what's your take?
I'll definitely say both. It's a much needed function, but also it's very much in its infancy. Traditionally, in this role, you used to get ex CEOs and COOs who are going
Operational
into.
people.
Exactly, yeah, who are
Mhm.
kind of going into that latter stage of their career, more board advisory type of positions. But now you're actually seeing a lot of PE firms wanting to add value to the portfolio companies by offering these types of professionals their expertise, their understanding of what those portfolio companies are going through. So it's a really much needed function for the
And when
portfolio
you are
companies.
working on the recruiting part, is everyone paid the same? So the deal people obviously have some kind of carried interest in a piece of the action. Do the operations people or the value creation folks also have carried interest when you're working on their compensation?
Mhm. So in short, it depends, but I would say, and we just released a compensation report a few weeks ago.
Boo on that. How did you release the compensation report? We're the compensation firm. What kind of
Yeah,
compensation report did you d- send out? We need that. We want to see it.
yeah, I'll send it over after. It's essentially the portfolio ops team. So what base, bonus, carried interest that they're looking to receive,
See,
and
Morgan,
it
I
goes
told
by.
you that
Yeah.
I often think that we need a separate lane on the Freelander platform for search firm data. And that we would add like the market data that comes from the people who participate in surveys. And then we could have a whole separate set of data where all the search firms fill in what their comp data is. And that way you would get exposure to all the companies, and then the companies would also get exposure to you and the data. I don't know. What do you think about that? Just as an aside, since we've got you on the spot.
I think definitely. I know there's a few search firms out there that do release similar comp reports. Hydrix, Charles Harris do one. I think PEI do their own comp report for operating partners. But go back to your original question, the operating team are closing the gap with the deals team in terms of cash compensation, so base plus bonus. But where there's still quite a large gap is the carried interest components. The operating team do get carried interest, and it's usually reserved for, I'd say, VP level and above, depending on the size of the firm, AUM, the investments that they're making. But a lot of portfolio ops professionals are now getting carried interest, but still way off to what
You have to
a
be
deal.
pretty savvy to, it sounds like, to negotiate for it, which is sort of the name of the game anyhow. I have one more question on the comp piece, and then Morgan, I'll turn it over to you. On the comp piece for the private equity firms, really at any level, do you find that you get into the negotiations of what the capital contribution is for the carry, or does that not apply?
So, in short, yes, we do get involved in that piece. Usually, they have a range or a ballpark figure that they can kind of open the gambit with, and then it's very much open to negotiation. And I think the banding is very much hinged on the PE firm's AUM, the size of the funds that they're raising, and then the size of the portcos that they're investing in. And you can really translate that to what level you're bringing this professional in and get some good kind of general ballpark figures as to what a portfolio ops professional can make. But it's similar to base salary and bonus. There's definitely room for negotiation in there, and you get some firms that will go above and beyond for absolute rock stars. So similar sort of negotiation, but different, I suppose, compensation vehicle.
Right. Well, that leads me to my next question, which is how did you get into recruiting? Obviously, I mean, I met you years and years and years ago because you
Where did you meet Paul?
through PitchBook because
Yep.
Paul activated his complimentary silver subscriptions as a part of the PitchBook partnership. And Paul was interested in both private company and investment firm. And as soon as I looked at Paul's LinkedIn, I was like, oh, this is obviously a person who knows exactly what they're doing.
Help
And
your future children, Morgan, because you already are one hell of a stalker. I give you credit. You learn
I
from the best. That would be me. There was no stone unturned in our house, or no unturned. And what does Randy Hauser say in his country song? No stone unturned and
Yeah.
no, right?
Well, except the difference between you and me, Jody, mom, is that I now have the newfound power of technology and the knowledge base of how to really use it. So that does definitely help me
No
out a little
stone
bit.
unturned and no what is it? No stone unturned and no turn unstoned. Something like
There
that.
you go.
Just want to
All
make sure
right.
I
So
have the
Paul,
lyrics right.
yeah, right. Seriously. I always give Jody a hard time, Paul, because she can't remember certain details about certain clients. But when we were in San Francisco for a conference a couple of weeks ago, we're on the top of Russian Hill and we're driving to a meeting in an Uber. She's like, I used to date a guy who lived right in that apartment. I was like, how do you
Yeah.
Yeah,
remember
that's
this?
true.
But
Morgan's like,
you
you need
don't
to reach out to
remember.
yeah, she said you
Right.
need to reach out to so and so for compensate to rebuy data. And I said, remind me who that is. And Morgan's like, seriously? Yeah, I remember the place where I used to go at like 3 in the morning after I'd been to a healthy night of partying, knocking on the door.
We had the
Seriously.
same thing in our household. My wife always uses her phone on a daily basis, but if you ask her kind of where the marker pen is or where like our baby's toy is, it's like, okay, go to the third shelf on the right hand side in this
Right.
closet. It's there. Like, yes, let's memories. Let's memories.
It is completely. I like I get the videos online where it's when your husband asks you for something and you're like, "Oh, you mean that screw I threw away 4 weeks ago because I was sick of looking at it on the counter?" And you're like, "I don't know, honey. I can't find it." Like,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
so okay, so back to my question. How did you get into recruiting? Obviously, you're a people person, so that what must have been a natural segue, but how recruiting and how private equity?
Mhm. So for recruiting, I really fell into it right after school. So I graduated in 2010. So the economy was still recovering, and I was just coming out of university, not too sure what to do with my life. Had a kind of general business management degree, And I was looking at opportunities, and I just got hooked by the on target earnings for search professionals. It was similar to kind of top banking salaries and legal salaries and so on. So I looked at it, it was a career with people, it was a career in sales. So I thought, you know what, why not? Let's give it a go. And then, yeah, 15 years later, I'm still in it. But that's how I got into search originally. And then private equity was an interesting one. And I actually have my wife to blame for it. So I was traditionally doing search work in oil and gas and construction, kind of heavy industrial industries. And I met my wife who works at PwC and started to learn how much kind of PwC partners made. So I thought, great, let's start placing some big four accountants into kind of the tier below the BDOs and the Grant Thorntons and the RSMs. So started doing that and then found out, oh, the McKinsey, Bain, and BCG guys make even more money. So started taking them out, putting them into smaller consulting firms. And then as I got more and more ingrained into the consulting world, most MBB professionals either want to be a Fortune 500 C-suite or they want to get into private equity, into this operating world. And I was like, okay, the Fortune 500 is a little bit too slow moving, too much red tape. Let's explore this private equity piece. And I learned about the value creation team, learned about portfolio ops, how fast moving and entrepreneurial private equity professionals are, how switched on and intelligent and accomplished they are. They're usually very successful,
Yeah, so you were
very
like, so
interesting.
you went for the show me the money. I mean, honestly,
Oh,
that's how
yeah.
I got started in compensation is I liked the idea of the money. And then when I was in San Francisco during the go-go.com days, I was working for several private companies that were taking, at the time it was so early. This was like in 1997, 98, 99, when we're like a toddler. And they were looking at ways to take what we did on a regular basis, like read a magazine every day and put those in to be online dailies. Or I worked for a company that was auctioning off, residual advertising space. And I was, would be sitting around and all the good stuff was going on in the boardroom. So I thought, how do I get in there? Like I need as a sort of HR generalist person, how do I find my way into a board meeting? And lo and behold, that was anything related to the cash equity mix. And then, of course, the very VCs that were in those discussions and meetings at one point sort of wanted, as it became more of a formal career, which now you're involved in the VC and the PE world, it not only was just available to the good old boy network, but it started to become a career track and have lots of service people around in it. And it's a very attractive group because, in general, if you can handle working with really smart people and understand that they're moving fast and they want responsiveness, which obviously you're very capable of. And from this conversation, I think Morgan and I would both agree we already adore your wife because she sounds like a total baller as well, which we love. Yeah, that you like all of this and you put it together in a way that's been very interesting. I'm curious to understand, like when you're looking at candidates, especially in the PE world, we understand that there are different personalities for each type of firm, but what is the number one consistent personality trait or type of person that falls into a candidate for a PE firm?
Mhm. I'll certainly say within the value creation team or portfolio ops team, it has to be that emotional intelligence. I think EQs have been at the absolute forefront of hiring in this space because it's such a complex area to operate where you're kind of sitting in between the deals team, the portfolio companies. You don't really have a P&L or a reporting structure. You're kind of the Swiss Army knife to fix problems when they come up and have as much impact without that clear authority. So that emotional intelligence and understanding this is important to a deals person. This is important to a portfolio company CFO. It's really understanding how to triage all those different areas and then prioritize and distill the information. So there's plenty of fundamental skills out there, but I'd say EQ is definitely the one that's front and center.
Yeah. It's a lot of people relationships and being able to have conversations with somebody. And also, I'll never forget a call I had actually with an Australian recruiter. and she was finishing a deal and her father had passed away, and she was emotional on the phone. And I mean, I've been in touch with her throughout the years, but it's one of those things where if there's a human component to it when you're especially on a private equity world in the private equity world where it is so you go in a private equity, if we were to sum it up in a in a short sentence, you're going in and you're trimming the fat. You want to be as efficient as possible and you want to make as much money as possible. It's a different model than venture capital. And that's a really summarized version of it. But it's interesting that you say, given that that's the model, that the EQ is still so it's an important role for any candidate.
Do you think someone can learn the EQ, or you think a candidate brings it in? Like, and do you find that in today's world that that falls into an age category? Like, are you coming across someone generationally that that ship sailed and the EQ is gone, or how is that working?
Yeah, I think it's like any skill to learn. You either kind of born with that innate ability, or you can kind of learn it over the years and get the reps in space and have that situational awareness and that compassion. I definitely do think that people who are born with it and just have that understanding have an unfair advantage. But I think with any type of skill, the more reps you get, the more different situations you're involved with, you start to have that pattern recognition and to start picking up the awareness and understanding. So I do think you can learn it, but it's a tough skill to master. You've got to be both aware of your surroundings as well as self-aware of how you're reacting and processing information. So it's a very difficult skill to learn, but I think it can be done.
Yeah. I always think about it where it's like a pool, and the depth piece of it, like you can get into the shallow end of it, but if you have depth of it, you just have to learn how to tap into it. But I don't necessarily know if you can build the pool to be deeper after a certain point. But I
Yeah.
guess my last question for you before we wind up is really and we've had some really impressive, wonderful women on this podcast, and we ask them how they manage between the personal life, like the home front of having kids and a husband, and then the professional side. So we're going to turn it on the other way and say, for you, obviously, you mentioned you have a child, you have a wife, you have trusted associates. How do you manage the career and the personal side?
Mm, that's a good question. Still figuring it out. It's, usually between January and March, it's my wife's busy season. She's a auditor, so we're in
Excellent.
the thick of it right now. But I'll just say, kind of time management and communication. I mean, I very much am very regimented with my schedule, so I'm up at 4:30, 4:45 every morning. I get a couple of hours of work in before our daughter wakes up, do the kind of getting ready, and then wife takes my daughter to daycare and goes off to work. Then I've got my usual kind of 7:30 till 5 p.m. at home doing work. I'll just say time management and communication, because your schedule's always fluctuating and it's always a bit of give and take. But I feel like if you've got a good structure and a good regimen where you're doing workouts from 2 till 3 every day, or you're getting up at 4:30 to get 2 hours of really focused, concentrated work, or you're doing something on the weekend, I think that ability to have that regimen but also fluctuate, I think that's really key.
Yeah, I guess my last question with all this is, it sounds like the private equity business is busy. Is it busier now than it was already this time last year, or how would you benchmark this first quarter?
Yeah, this is an extremely busy first quarter. I think private equity has been saying it's going to be busy next year for the last 4 or 5 years or so. And last year had all the elements to it, but then we had the tariffs in, I think it was February, March time, which just put everything on pause in terms of deal flow. The really exciting thing is everyone was saying it in Q4 this year, and there's actually the activity to back it up. So we're extremely busy at the moment. We've got a ton of great searches on with good clients. So I think specifically within the value creation team, from what I'm hearing, is it's going to be a busy 2, 3, 5 years ahead because there's such a focus on it.
We love to hear that. Well, thank you, Paul, very much for joining us. Just out of curiosity, how old is your daughter?
She's 20 months now. Um,
Woo! Well, we've already
May.
revealed on our last podcast that Morgan is pregnant with a girl. So we're very, you know, baby and girl. And Morgan said, I got a promotion to being a grandmother coming soon. So that's exciting. And Morgan to a mom. And
Mhm.
we may be reaching
Great.
out to you and your wife for some tips.
Yeah, 100%. We've got our second daughter coming in early to mid-April. So, yeah, we're really excited. But congratulations. That's awesome news.
Thank you. Well, you obviously
Well,
have the very high EQ. So your daughters are well, your one daughter for sure is definitely going to benefit from that piece, and the second one will undoubtedly will as well.
thank you.